is MindCouch Habits, how to make them and break them. We're on episode 4 now, which is of the season of the session that we've been doing on MindCouch. And we started off with kind of how to stay connected, and we looked at well-being and how to look after yourselves, and then we moved into kind of being motivated and what are people's motivators and how do you stay productive. And then last week we looked at kind of keeping the teaming culture and the value in that, and what that provides for you, whether you're still working but you're working remotely, or whether you're on furlough. This week we want to start to look at habits. So I'm sure a lot of you have probably made some habits, broken some bad habits while we've been going through all of this. So it's good to share that, and our panelists are going to share that with us. And then obviously navigating change next week is a really apt one, especially for the beginning of June as we start to sell more super pay deals. And then Chris is going to host a session on the 9th of June about the importance of self-awareness as well. So today's panelists, we have Chris, Hetzel and Hannah joining us. I'm going to let each of them introduce themselves, and then we'll get cracking into what makes habits. How do we make them and how do we break them? So Chris, can you introduce yourself for us, please?
Sure. Thank you, Sheila. Morning, everybody. For anyone that isn't familiar with myself, I am the Sales Enablement Manager for the business. I've been here 2.5 years now. I run the training and coaching team. I see a couple of people out there. Shout out to Lux and Christian. Thanks for joining. And predominantly responsible for all the sales functions of the business, helping provide the training, the support, the information, and the content to help us sell more effectively, and obviously aligned to the customer first approach. So thanks for having me.
Amazing. Thank you, Chris. Hetzel, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi Sheila, hi everyone. So I'm Hetzel and I'm an enterprise consultant here at Payment Sense. I've been working for Payment Sense for around coming up to 8 years now, and I've done various different roles. I started off in outbound and slowly moved my way over to retentions. I was then the first person to pilot renewals, and because I was so successful at the renewals, they built the department on the back of this. I then slowly moved over to inbound sales. This is when Steve and Hina realized, saw the potential in me to be selling, and I made my way into inbound sales, and I moved over to Connect, which focused on integration. And for the last 18 months or so, I've been doing enterprise sales, which focuses on high value customers. And my goal is to provide the best level of service to each and every customer that I board.
Brilliant, thank you, Hetzel. And just over to Hannah now then, please. Can you just introduce yourself?
Hi, so I'm Hannah. I joined Payment Sense 3 months ago. So mid-lockdown almost. I was in the office for about 2 weeks. And I am the internal comms manager. So I will be looking at, have been looking at the ways that we communicate. So town halls, newsletters, everything that you can think of, Slack. We're building a new intranet at the moment. So lots of exciting projects. I've worked in communications for about 7 years across PR, marketing, and internal communication. And I most recently came from eBay. So it's great to be here, and I'm excited for today's session. I think I'm going to learn more than share advice, but we'll see how we go.
Thanks, Hannah, and hopefully we learn from you too. Okay, guys, so as normal, I just want to do a little bit of context setting to take us through kind of what we're talking about today, and set the scene for what the panelists are going to take us through. So habits there's good and there's bad. So that's what I want us to really focus on. It's not just about how to make habits and how to form habits. It's also about how to break the bad ones as well. And the guys are going to share some of their insights on that today. But just starting off, first of all, one of the things that we have to recognize with forming habits is why we're doing it and what it kind of leads to. And also that it doesn't have to be this kind of life-altering kind of big project, big scale, like change you as a person kind of habit that you're trying to form. And one of the things that we should really be thinking about, particularly when you're looking not only at the work that you do, but in your personal life, is a concept called aggregation of marginal gains. So this is all taken, today's session is kind of based around a book called Atomic Habits, which is here. I fully recommend it if you want to kind of read more about this and learn a bit more about it. But basically what they do there is they talk about this concept of actually, instead of making these kind of massive, large scale changes, what would happen if you made incremental improvements of 1% for each thing that you had control over? So in this context, I'm calling it a lever. And if you had control over all the levers, what would you do to improve it just by 1%? And then you add up all those 1% and what else could you achieve? How much better will you be? And an example of this is in the British cycling team, so the Olympic cycling team in 2008. They did this. So they hired a guy called David Brailsford, who was their head of performance. And he came in at a time when they weren't winning many medals. They had a few, but they hadn't won like kind of big, large scale medals for about 100 years. But they needed to really improve everything about their performance and put the British cycling team on the map, if you like. And he used aggregation of marginal gains and looked at how he could make incremental improvements. And that year, they actually won 60% of the gold medals in the Olympics, which is just phenomenal. And the way that he did that was he looked at every kind of performance enabler and looked at how he could make those improvements. So just a couple of the things, or a few of the things that he looked at there, you can see on the screen, is things like the fitness of the athlete. So I think he worked out the kind of average time that people who were winning the gold medals took, and he said, actually, we want to be about 2% quicker. So he said, right, we're going to make 2% increases or improvements on everything that we do. So fitness of the cyclist, how do we improve their fitness by 2%? How do we reduce their body fat by 2%? How do we look at the improvement of the tyre treads? So they rubbed alcohol into it to make them even better when they were cycling. And they looked at wheel design as well. So they actually hired scientists and and engineers and people that could come in and kind of redevelop all of this for the equipment they were using. They had a look at the skin suits that they were wearing as well, and how could they make them better. They had a look at the helmets. So again, they had a scientist and some engineers recreate a brand new helmet for them that was more streamlined and lighter. And they fixed all the little parts, and then all of those collectively together made it vastly different. So they won the 60% of the gold medals, which is just a huge improvement. Like I said, they hadn't had anything near that in about 100 years. So that's what we need to think about, and we can do this both at home and in our personal lives, and we can do it in the work that we do. So looking at things and looking at how can we make just small incremental changes, and how does that fit together. And I'm going to use an example where we use this, and it was with field sales. So about 2 years ago, we kind of restarted some of the field sales stuff that we were doing, and we said, actually, let's look at all the levers and how do we make incremental improvements on all of it. So we looked at the marketing piece, we looked at the onboarding piece, we looked at the training, we looked at the support they got afterwards, we looked at sales support with it. So we looked at all the different levers that we had and how do we improve those to make it better, and overall feel is in a better place down the line. So that's an example of how you can use it. But what we need to think about is how do we actually then form the habits, and how do we make these into habits that we're going to use. So there's a model that you can use. It's a 4-step process for how to form habits. And then on the next slide, I'm going to go through a bit around creating the good habits and breaking the bad habits, and how you use this 4-step process. And I'll give you an example of this. But the first step to forming any kind of habit is having a cue for it. So there needs to be some kind of trigger that prompts that behavior. So it needs to prompt you into doing something, to act on it. And it normally predicts a reward at the end of it. So you normally say, like, if this is the cue, there's going to be something that's going to come out of this at the end that's going to make me better at this. Then the second step is craving. So then you've got the cue, which kind of opens up the door for this habit to form. But then you get the motivation or the desire to actually act on that cue. So you actually want to go ahead and do something about it. So those first two are kind of in this problem zone. So you kind of identify the problem and you have this motivational desire to do something about it. But at this point, you haven't yet done anything. The next part then is the response. So this is actually you doing something. So it's the solution phase of it. So you're looking at how you actually perform that habit. So it could be a thought, but it could be an action. And you actually go out and do it. And then at the end of it, you get the reward. And the reward is crucial, because the reward is the part that allows you to repeat that action. So you actually keep it going and you keep doing it, and it becomes a habit. So the reward you need to focus on, and we're going to talk about that with our panelists today around what their rewards are for their habits. So just to give you an example of those, just so it's quite clear. For example, a cue could be you wake up. So you wake up after sleeping all night, and you have this kind of sudden craving that you want to feel alert. So your response to that is you go and make yourself a cup of coffee. You get your caffeine fix. And then your reward for doing that is that you now feel alert. So you've satisfied that craving. You then begin to associate drinking coffee with waking up and satisfying your craving. And it then repeats that behavior. So you do that the next morning because you associate drinking the coffee with actually feeling more alert in what you do. And you want to have that feeling every single day. So every morning you make a coffee and then it becomes a habit. And I'm sure a lot of us have that. We start the day, I start with a cup of tea every single morning. It's the first thing I do is go down and make myself a cup of tea. So we start to form that habit. And hopefully that simplifies it. That's a very, very simple example, but it shows you the 4 steps to kind of forming that habit. But like I said, don't forget the reward stage, because the reward piece, like I said, is a part that prompts you to redo it as well. So think about new habits that you want to form and what you want to get into. It could be running. I'm going to use running later because that's a new habit that I've recently formed. But think about that reward as we go through. So that's how to start forming the habits. But how do you kind of create the good and break the bad? And Atomic Habits, the book, I really recommend that you do read it if you're interested in this, but it goes into this in a lot more detail. This is just an introductory, but it breaks down those 4 steps: the cue, craving, response, and reward. And then it says what you need to do to kind of best practices for creating the good habits, but then also how to break the bad ones, because I think often we forget about the bad habits that we have as well. So cue for making it obvious. What you have to do there is you have to have an awareness of the habits before you change them. So the point there is, yeah, you wake up is a cue, but you're probably not consciously thinking about it. You want to think about what you want to do. So I'm going to use the example of running. I think I mentioned a couple of episodes ago, I've started the Couch 5K. So I'm trying to make running a habit so that I keep it up. And one of the things that I do in order to make it obvious and I have an awareness is to associate a time and a place for it to happen. So I make it, I say to myself, look, I'm going to run, and I'm going to run on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Sundays, and I'm going to do it just around my area, so I don't go too far anyway. But I make it a habit that way by saying, actually, if I scope out this time in my week, and I'm going to do this every time, it's making it more obvious, that cue for it. And I'm going to do it first thing in the morning when I wake up. So that's my trigger for it as well. In the reverse, you have to, if you want to break it, you need to make it invisible. So you have to reduce your exposure to that cue, I suppose. So if I was to use that in the reverse and I wanted to stop running, for example, I would stop associating time and location to it, and I would stop kind of trying to fit it into my day, perhaps put some other things in there instead. So I start to reduce it and I start to make it less visible for me. The second one then is the craving. So as we said, you've had that trigger. Now you want the motion or the desire to actually do it. So in order to do that and to make it a good habit, you need to make it attractive. So you need to think about your need first, and then what your want is afterwards. So I'll give you an example. Not that I would use this, but as an example, I want to go on Facebook, but I know that I need to do running because running is the habit that I want to do. So to make running attractive, I'm going to go on Facebook after I've done my run. So I'll pull out my phone, I will then go and do my run. And when I come back and I've done my run, then I can check Facebook. So I'm making it more attractive to do it, because I'm saying, actually, again, that's bringing in that reward, but it's allowing me to say, look, I'll do what I need to do for my habit, and then my want that I want to do, I'll do it after I've done it. So it starts to become, I'm starting to act on that desire. And again, in the reverse, if you want to break it, you have to make it unattractive. And a way to do this is perhaps highlighting the benefits of not doing it. So for example, a bad habit I can think of would be biting your nails, for example. So how do you make that unattractive? We'll talk about all the downfalls of it. I can't wear nice nail polish, I can't go to the salon and get my nails done. I don't know, things like that make it less attractive, because then you realize the things that you're restricted in doing. The third one then is response, like we said. So this starts to go into that solution. So you need to make it easy. And that one's a crucial one, because I think too often we kind of strive to make these habits like all consuming, and it ends up being too much time and we don't have time to allocate to it. So you need to make it achievable and easy. And again, using my example of running, the way that I do it is I know that I don't have energy in the evenings. I can't exercise in the evenings because I'm too tired from the working day, or perhaps meetings overrun and then I just put it off. So I said to myself, right, when I do my run, I'm going to do it at 7 a.m. So I do it before work, before my day started, get out of bed and just go straight for a run. So I'm making it more easy for myself, and that therefore I can carry it on and I will repeat it, because it's not eating into any other part of my day. It's the start of the day. I'm done by 7:30, and then I'm ready to go and get showered and get ready for the day. So that's how I made it easy. Again, you'd make it difficult by adding in more steps to do the behavior. So think about the number of steps between you and that bad habit. What could you do to make it more difficult to do it? And therefore you won't do it. And then the last one, like we said, is this reward piece. So creating good is make it satisfying. So you need to have something at the end of it, but you need to think about more immediate rewards rather than ones that are far in the future. So often people say, well, if you manage to get to 5K, then you should reward yourself. So if you manage to do the 9-week program and then you get the reward, it probably won't be as effective if you say, actually, I'm going to have smaller rewards for every run that I do. So it's more immediate in that sense, and it's easier for you to kind of measure it and to see that you're actually doing it and then want to do it again. Like I said, the key here is the repetition piece. Good ways of doing this is things like progress trackers. So if you can look back and see how you've done. So I quite like about the app, you can see what runs you're doing and how far you are to your next goal. Apps like Strava for running, for example, they're really good because they show you where you've gone, how far, what time you did. So again, that's for you, it's tracking your progress, and it's allowing you to think, actually, I want to get better and do the next one. So think about that as well, and how you can make that satisfying. And again, in the reverse, it's the unsatisfying piece. So how can you associate the downsides of it? So how can you not have things that are reward? So perhaps it could be that you have someone I don't know, telling you to break the habit or something, that it makes it it makes it more unsatisfying because they're in your ear nagging you about it and telling you to stop it, so therefore you just stop it. So hopefully that gives you a bit of insight. It's very, very high level, like I said, and it's only the beginning bit, but I really cannot recommend this book anymore. And put it on the screen, Atomic Habits by James Clear. I'll link it afterwards in the email when I send out the recording, but it's really worth seeing. It breaks it down and gives loads of examples of this and how you can create it. But today's session, we're going to be speaking to Chris, Hettel and Hannah about their habits and what they've been doing. So I'm going to just stop sharing my screen and take it into our first question. So I'll go to Chris first on this one. So in keeping with the theme, can you tell us any of the habits that you've formed or broken, in particular during lockdown, so in the recent months, and it can be personal or professional?
Yeah, thanks, Sheila. Yeah, absolutely. I think for me, I'm on furlough, so probably a lot of it has been around personal, but it has influenced, I think, professional, just from my own learning and development point of view. So it's probably been 2 or 3 main ones, and they haven't changed too much, but I think I've just got a bit clearer with them. And one is exercise. To Sheila's point about running, I'm not a massive runner. Knees went ages ago, so I love sort of keeping fit, and football's off the cards at the moment. So one of the things I've started to do every day is try and just fit in a workout, and it just started off really small, with like 5 or 10 minutes. But just doing something just to get me moving, because I know when I do that, it makes me feel good. It puts my mindset in the right place. So that's one of the things. And another thing that's contributed to my mindset is eating healthier. So, you know, for when I was at work, when you're working, it's very easy each day, just sort of grab things on the go. You know, and I've found myself in routines in the past where I've eaten quite healthy, but being at home has sort of really allowed me to take time in preparing food more, like having smoothies, actually appreciating food a bit more rather than just sort of going for convenience. So they're the 2 things really. And I suppose the third thing that I've started doing is just a bit more around regular self-development, is spending time to actually learn a bit more about myself, but also because, you know, everyone's stuck at home at the moment, so I'm sure everyone's got like all these sort of self-talk conversations going on. So it's been really interesting to do that, but also just spend time expanding my knowledge that will help me in my role, but also just help me as a person, really. So they're the kind of ones, and I suppose they link to the breaking of habits of, you know, exercise before could be quite sporadic. Eating was some weeks good, some weeks bad. So they're the main ones I'd go for, those 3.
Great, thank you. And I like that one about the eating, because you're right, you've broken a bad habit there, like you said, of not preparing your meals and not doing things. And you've created the good one of doing it now, which is good. And I think often we forget that things as simple as that, like eating healthily, should be a habit for you to make that lifestyle change as well. Okay, so same question over to you, Hannah. Is there any that you've kind of broken or made during lockdown?
I mean, there's a similar theme here. Exercise has been one that I think was always dictated by work. I think I just would wait to see what was on that week and then try and fit exercise in. And if a meeting ran over, same as kind of what Sheila was saying, exercise would get pushed back. And so I've been really conscious about doing it every day before work. And it feels so much better. And I think, having someone, I need someone to kind of keep me accountable. So I've never been very good at going on my own to the gym or going to a class on my own. I love having friends to go with or family. And so having my partner at home as well, we've been exercising every morning, whether that be a walk or a run, or we've got boxing gloves now. So we're kind of amateur boxing. And it's just been really nice to kind of, the alarm goes off every morning and we've got no choice of just got to do something, even if it's for 15 minutes. And I think that habit now, we don't even think about it. We just get up and work out what we're going to do. And we've also got into the habit of writing a list at the start of the week of what kind of exercise we want to do. So planning out Tuesday and Thursdays we do boxing, and on a Wednesday we might just go for a walk. So we've got a bit of a routine now, which has kind of turned into a habit, which is really nice. On not so good habits, I think this is probably from my last job. I worked in the PR team, and so we use WhatsApp all the time. We're always checking social media and news, and I'm a real phone checker. I'm always picking up my phone. I'm scrolling in the mornings, first thing looking at news, and then last thing before I go to bed. And I thought, while we're in lockdown, this is a really good time to stop that. And the fact that we're on Slack all the time, I've got no excuse to really be on my phone during the day. So I've after seeing one of the morning mindsets with MobFit, I had a little sticky note on my phone all day saying, do not check unless it's 11 a.m. or 2 p.m. So I try not to check my phone now, and it's actually working. And I've kept my phone outside of my room in the evenings overnight. So I don't check it in the mornings anymore, and I get out of bed and I don't check it before I go to bed. I read now. So that's been a nice habit to break, I think, because I really realized when we're at home that I was constantly picking up that phone. And then the other thing, which Chloe, my boss, has been helping me with is, it's a bad habit that I'm turning into a good habit, which is prioritizing work based on the demand. So I think the people pleaser in me, if someone sends me a Slack or I've got, something urgent, I'll just go off on my day taking in requests from different people. And I've, got into a habit now of prioritizing my day at the start of the day. Chloe and I have a kind of star system that we both use for our work, and we star the things that we must get done by the end of the day, the kind of non-negotiables, and then the rest of the list can always move over to the next day. But that's been a really nice habit that's helped kind of manage that constant stream of Slack messages and knowing that sometimes you just have to push back on things and get the non-negotiable important stuff done. So they're kind of the main things.
I think that's great. I love that star system, and using someone to make you accountable at work as well. I think that's brilliant. I think that's a really good a good habit to start using. Okay, so last question then is to Hettel. So same for you, Hettel. What habits have you made, broken, and what do you do?
Like Hannah and Chris said, it's more around exercise and my well-being physically and mentally. So a personal habit that I've broken, I would say, is going to my CrossFit box. So going to the gym. That CrossFit has always played a big part in my life. And with the gyms being closed, I've had to find other forms of exercise in order to make sure I stimulate the mind and keep myself fit and healthy. So a few friends told me about the app Down Dog. And I've always enjoyed doing yoga at work, Wednesday evening class. And with being at home, I thought, how could I incorporate this and do this daily, carry this on daily? So I downloaded the app, and I've been practicing yoga most days, I think nearly every day, even if it's like a quick short session. So that's the habit I have formed. I've also been journaling daily. So when I was working and going to the office, I would try and journal, and maybe journal one day, not the other. And but since being at home, that's the first thing I do. I make a cup of tea and I sit down and journal and write down my thoughts and write down a list of things I want to do and achieve throughout the day. So that's definitely a habit that's stuck the last couple of months. And a habit I've broken, I'd say, is having a morning coffee. So going into the office and going to the coffee bar, grabbing coffee, it kind of became a routine, and I felt like I needed a coffee to kind of wake myself up. Being at home, I've not had a single cup of coffee. I think instant coffee just doesn't do it for me. So I've just not had coffee, and I've kind of found my morning energy in other ways, whether it's doing a yoga session in the morning or getting a good night's sleep. And another habit professionally I've formed is doing my daily Zoom call with my team. So we have a Zoom call with me, Hina, Lewis and Trelawney, and it's the same time every day, and it's just something that I look forward to, and it's just become a habit now, a good habit, and it's just nice to kind of catch up and see what everyone else is getting up to, share stories, and so I guess that's another habit I've formed. And cycling, actually. So I'm not a runner. I did try running the first few days and really wanted to try and get into it, but it just didn't suit me. So I bought a bike and I've been cycling maybe 3 times a week. So it's just another form of exercise and also getting some fresh air, getting out. And I'd say cycling has become another habit of mine too.
Wow, I mean, they're amazing, Hessel. There's so many habits there that you've got. And some good broken ones too. I quite like that one that you were just saying there about the bike one, because what you recognise there is that running's not for you, which again is part of that thing. Make it easy, make it achievable, make it attractive as well. If you realise that something's not for you, don't force it. Like, move on to the next thing and find something different. So that's brilliant, and I'm glad to see that it's made such a difference for you guys. And I think there's so much there around a lot of exercise things as well. And I think that kind of we benefit from that at the moment because of this work from home. We're allowed to kind of adjust our lifestyle slightly to fit more of these things in, which is good. But Hetzel and Hannah, this question is going to be for both of you guys. Obviously, you're both still working, and it sounds like you've both formed some really great habits. But how are you kind of fitting everything in? Have you found any challenges with this, how are you fitting this into your schedule? So I'll start with you, Hannah.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of dread the thought of going back into the office now, because I can't imagine how we all fit hour to 2 hour commutes into our day. I think for me, it's been, I kind of need structure and routine. So fitting everything in has kind of happened quite naturally, but I have to be, if I rolled out of bed at 9 o'clock and kind of got straight onto my computer, I think my day would be quite ineffective and not very efficient. So a big thing for me is kind of getting up, as I said, exercising, getting ready for work, and kind of forming that habit or routine every day, and then working out how my day is structured. And, Sheila, I think you mentioned a couple of weeks ago, adding in a lunch break if you can. That's been really important as well, because I think what's really hard is the bad habits that you fall into when you're working at home, which is, starting earlier, working late, working through, not getting up and not having those natural breaks that you might have in the office. So someone comes over to your desk, or you go to fill up your drink bottle, or go and get a coffee with someone. That's all not happening. So I think we have to be really careful about falling into kind of bad habits and making sure that we benefit from this time. So for me, it's been putting in that structure and having consistent days where possible, so that I can build in those habits and the routine and keep myself accountable.
Yeah, I think routine is definitely the key for this. And I've, similar to you, I make sure I get up way before 9 o'clock just to start my day. I try and get up at the same time I would if I was commuting, actually. And then that gives you that time, doesn't it, where you can fit in these habits. But same as you, I'm like, what am I going to do when I go back to the office? How am I going to fit this in? I've already been mentally working out in my head how I'm going to do it. I'll get up half an hour earlier and then fit it all in. Okay, so same question to you, Hessel. For you, how are you fitting it? I mean, you've got loads, so how are you fitting this in?
So I feel like when I first started working from home, I felt like I'd have a lot more time on my hands, especially saving 2 hours on the commute. But I slowly began to realise that you honestly, the day will just fly by. And I think at first I tried to fit in everything. I wanted to fit in a HIIT class, I wanted to fit in yoga, I wanted to fit in a daily walk. So I think I was trying to like cram in too much, and I soon realized that that wasn't possible. So it was more about taking practical steps rather than unrealistic ones, which I first tried to do. And I had to tell myself that small steps are better than like a giant leap. So it's kind of what you spoke about at the start, about the incremental 1% steps. So it's just about slowly incorporating that. So for example, with yoga, rather than just trying to do a 1 hour session, what I started to do on the Down Dog app is it allows you to select the time that you want to do the practice for. So whether it's starting off on an 8-minute session, which I first did, and then I slowly increased it to a 10-minute session, 15-minute session, 30 minutes. So, and building my way up to a 1 hour session. So during the week, I will maybe do like a half an hour session in the morning. And then on the weekend, I'll do a longer session. So yeah, it's just more about fitting things in and being more practical about it. And also, I think what's important to me is to find out what motivates me and the reason why I want this change. So for example, yoga, what kind of benefits will I get from it? You know, will it de-stress me? Will it, you know, make me less anxious? Will it, you know, keep me more focused? And I've also incorporated doing the mob fit classes at 12 o'clock because I feel like it breaks my day up. And it also kind of gives me that boost of endorphins. So that's the real benefit from it that I see, and that's why I wanted to carry it on. And even when I do the 12 o'clock class, I feel, you know, ready for the afternoon. I feel more productive. So yeah, it's just about finding out what benefits I will gain from it and what motivates me.
Yeah, I think that makes sense, and that goes back to that reward piece, isn't it? So what's the reward you're going to get from your habits? And I like the way that you broke it right down as well, and didn't force yourself to go into the full 1 hour sessions, and actually said, how much realistically can I achieve first, and start there and do your stepping stones. Okay, so Chris, for you, obviously you're in furlough at the moment, so you're at home. You can create all these great habits, and you can do your healthy eating and your exercise, but is this just for lockdown, or are you looking at ways you're going to keep this as part of your lifestyle going forward?
Yeah, I think before I went into lockdown, you know, some of these parts were an element of mine, but some of them are quite new still. So even a few that I haven't mentioned, I think one of the main things that I'm really going to focus on and have done already is just reminding myself, as you mentioned at the start, of why I'm doing them, because every habit is, you're creating a habit to lead to a goal, to lead to doing something. And I think some people kind of forget the bigger picture, and you'll create something for the sake of it because you think it sounds good or everyone else is doing it. For example, like as Hannah mentioned, Hetzel mentioned about running's not for her, it's not for me at all. Some people might just start it because they see everyone else doing it and see the Strava app and think, oh, I need to do this. So I think it's just kind of like reminding myself why I want to do this, like what is actually going to benefit me from doing that. And I suppose how I'm, in terms of practical points of view, going to keep it going is planning, really. You know, for example, exercise. I used to, a couple of years ago, get up every morning at 6 and go to the gym, and it's something, you know, I've done in the past and something I can do again. So at the moment I have the convenience of a bit more of a flexible day, but I suppose once I start moving back into work routine, whether that's working from home and then eventually in the office, it's just planning things out. And, you know, I'll share a bit later around implementation intentions, but I think it's just being really clear as to when I'm going to do something, where I'm going to do something, and how long I'm going to do it for.
Right. Yeah, I think that makes 100% sense. And I think you're right in terms of planning. The biggest thing is just planning for when things change and how you can keep that up. Okay, so in order to form a habit, we've talked about the fact that you need to know what your goal is and what you want to achieve from it. And you've all kind of mentioned that particularly you were talking there around kind of what the benefits and what you're going to get out of doing it. But what things have influenced you with the things that you have done? Have they just come to you naturally? Have you had someone inspire you? How have you guys come to decide what you're going to actually do? So I'll flip that over to Hetzel first, if you want to start.
That's a really good question, Sheila. So in regards to what inspires me, so coming from like a sales background, I feel like I've always been quite competitive, and for a long time my goal was to be the best and to be able to do my job to the best of my ability, and to be very persistent. But I feel like recently my goals and priorities have changed, and maybe that's due to the pandemic and what's happening around the world. I think that really makes you realize what's actually really important. And personally for me, I feel like my number one priority is looking after my health, my well-being. And if I can take good care of myself, then I can do my job well and look after others. So whether that's taking regular breaks throughout the day, or eating well, or making sure I get a good night's sleep. And in terms of work, I feel like my goal has slightly shifted towards thinking about the customer and putting myself in their shoes, and really making sure that I can really listen more, be a more active listener, and kind of problem solve and come up with resolutions, rather than just kind of, speaking to them about what I want to say. And like going back to what inspires you. So I feel like as I've grown up, like my family have really inspired me, and I've kind of been conditioned in this way that, you have to pick yourself up and figure out a solution and just kind of keep yourself going. So I guess my family inspire me, and also those around me, like, the leaderships at work, whether it's my manager or, seeing people at work do well, that kind of inspires me to want to also do well. Yeah, I hope that answers your question.
It does, yeah, and I think you make a really good point about well-being. I think it's such a big focus for so many businesses now, and so just people in general with this whole pandemic. I think people are really focusing on their mental and physical well-being a lot more with this. Okay, so Hannah, same question over to you. What's your inspiration for your goals?
I think the exercise, as much as I don't want to admit it, I think I'm getting married. Well, I don't know if I am getting married. We might be getting married depending on what happens with the pandemic in September. So I think that's motivated me from an exercise and health perspective, and making sure that we're exercising every day and eating well. I think professionally, I've just started a new job, and I want to do well, and I wanted to get into good habits, and I think that's been a huge motivator for me in getting those habits in now while you're in a new role and you can do that. And then I think externally, there's a few things. I think, as Hedel said, great people that I've worked with, family and friends, and then also a lot of motivational speakers. So the guy Dan, who did the Mob Fit performance goals session a couple of weeks ago, I thought he was fantastic, and he really kind of reminded everyone that it takes, I think it's 12 weeks to form a habit, and that this stuff doesn't happen overnight, and you can't be too hard on yourself, and that you do need to think about what your goals are. So that was really important in kind of reinforcing some of those basic but important messages that you might forget when you're trying to create a habit. And then I think one tip that I'll just share, because I think this has been really important to me, and I kind of forgot about it until I was filling in this questionnaire, because it's just happened really naturally, is there's a podcast I listen to, and every year they set a word of the year. So instead of having a New Year's resolution, each of the hosts picks a word. So for example, a few years ago, mine was now. So with my personal admin, I was really bad at putting off, accountants and other kind of life admin stuff that you're supposed to do on the weekend that you never get around to, and seeing friends or whatever it was that I was supposed to do, I just was putting it off. So my word was now. And then last year it was health. So I needed to make sure I went to the dentist, and I got my health checkups, and I got my skin checked, and things that I'd been putting off for a while. And this year it's around family, which I think might have to do with the wedding, but making sure I check in with my parents more, and call my friends from school that I don't call, who are all back in Australia. And this word has been really important, because you basically have it all year, and it's this constant reminder of, if something you might want to change or do more of or improve. And it's just a really, really easy way to set a goal for the whole year that's that you can kind of revolve your life around a little bit and think about what's really important to you. So I feel it's been, although I didn't mention it in one of my habits now, it's just something that's flowed through my whole life kind of, and my whole year, the last couple of years, is having this word that I write down at the start of the year.
Oh, I love that. I think that's great. It's so powerful. Okay, good. I might have to try that one as well. I'm getting loads of tips off you, Hannah, and you said you'd just be learning on this session. Okay, so Chris, same question to you.
Yeah, thanks, Sheila. And yeah, echoing Hannah's and Hedel's points there. I think, for me, I get inspired a lot around what other people are doing. You know, I think social media gets a bad rap for a lot of things in terms of how people maybe portray things on there. But I think one of the benefits is that you can really connect with people and engage with people that you would never have met 10, 15 years ago. And, you know, for me, being able to learn from those people and obviously having a podcast myself and directly speaking to them is a real inspiration to see where people have, not just where they are now, but where they started. And another thing that inspires me, and I'll give some context to this, is myself. And I think everyone should be inspired by themselves. It's not an egotistical thing. But I think, you know, we focus so much on some of the things sometimes we're not doing well, but everyone's done so well to get where they are to this point. Like, everyone could probably reflect on that. And I think it's sometimes just giving yourself more credit to say, actually, do you know what? Look at all the things I have done, big or small, to get where I am now, and just using that to continue to strive and develop. Because for me, like, one of the big things for myself is I don't want to settle. I never want to just be in a role or in a position or in a headspace where I just think this is it. Like, you know, there's not much else to it. I think there's always more to learn, more to do, more to enjoy. So that's my main points, really.
Thanks, Chris. Yeah, and you're right. Your network is a huge inspiration, and yourself. You're right. You need to take that time to recognise it, and hopefully your session on self-awareness will help us learn how to do that. So just sticking with you, Chris, around the kind of next part I want to look at is we looked at how to set the goals and how to form the good habits and what you guys have formed. But I talked about the crucial point there being the reward piece. So making sure there is some kind of reward that you're going to get at the end of it, and it's an immediate reward that you can get that allows you to keep repeating that behaviour. So Chris, with the habits that you've formed, kind of what are the rewards that you've noticed for yourself, or that you've kind of intentionally set up?
Yeah, there's two, really. I think, you know, I'm not saying do this for everything, but I think sometimes it's good to attach something to that reward. So whether it's buying something or doing something, to actually say, I wouldn't have done this, or I wouldn't have bought this if I hadn't have done this habit. It's just a good way to be a bit more intentional. So there's things that I've got around my apartment or things that I've done that I know I've done that because of creating a new habit around it, which has made me sort of think, you know, I want to do more things like it as well. And another thing as well, to reward myself, I suppose, when I have created that isn't something too big that I don't just go and spend money on everything, because I think that's mad. I'd be broke anyway if I did. But one of the things is visualization. And, you know, some people might be listening to this going, oh, this guy sounds a bit hippie-ish, but I think it's something that's really helped me. And I've spoken to so many people that it helps as well. And I think once you've created that habit and getting to that reward phase, I think it's a good time to reflect and go, actually, do you know what? Imagine I've hit my goal. Imagine what this habit can now help me do. And imagine I've already done it. And just realizing, you know, and being grateful for, you know, by doing this, by eating healthy or exercising, this is where I'll be in 2 months or 3 months or a year. And just the more you can do that, the more you can kind of just reward yourself to go, yeah, you might not see the benefit of it right now, but in the long run, as you mentioned in the marginal gains earlier, you'll see a huge benefit from it at the end. Yeah,
I think that's right. I quite like the visualization piece as well. I think that works. It's very strong. Okay, so the next thing that we kind of need to draw attention to is, obviously, it's all very well saying that you've got a goal and you know what your reward is and you're going to create this habit and you've carved out the time that you're going to do it. But ultimately, sometimes we get blockers and we get things that stop us from achieving that or from doing that and actually performing it. So how do you remove those blockers for yourself, and what are the blockers you've come up against with forming your habits? I'll take that one over to Hettel, actually. So Hettel, has there been any blockers that you've had to remove, and how do you do it?
Yeah, I think Hannah spoke about this when she mentioned about being on her phone less. So I feel like I kind of sometimes, you know, have got into the habit of just looking at my phone first thing in the morning or last thing at night. Or if I've, you know, been working for a couple of hours, I'll just kind of go into autopilot and just have a look at my phone. So I've really kind of made a conscious effort to kind of move away from that, and whether it's putting my phone away or on silent, so I'm less distracted on it. This also meant that I've been on social media less and procrastinating less too. And in return, it's allowed me to focus my energy, whether it's on myself or my work. I've also kind of like created an office space. So before I was working in my living room, well, down here actually, and I felt like I was constantly just looking at my emails. So even after switching off after 6 p.m, I'd still be I'll see my laptop there. I'd quickly log on. But then I bought a desk and I got a chair and I kind of created a little office in my spare room. And I feel like this has just worked better for me. So creating my own office where I can fully concentrate on my work and then switch off to create the right work-life balance. And it's allowed me to maximize my potential then on my work. So I feel like this is really important to kind of like, help me or stop me from distracting myself. And yeah.
Yeah, you're right. Removing physical barriers and looking at kind of physical settings as well. And I suppose, again, it goes back to that part there around making it easy. So how do you make it easier to actually do that as well? Yeah, and setting aside space is definitely a good way to do it. Okay, so Hannah, same question to you. I know you talked about the mobile phone and putting the post-it note on it, which is brilliant. Is there anything else that you've kind of noticed with your habits and making and breaking them that you've had to kind of physically remove any blockers?
Yeah, I mean, I think what's been really interesting about lockdown is that it's removed this kind of hectic busyness. So, I certainly woke up every morning already feeling like I was behind and I hadn't left enough time to get ready or to exercise or to eat breakfast. And then you're rushing to the train and you've missed the train that you wanted to get. And then you don't get to work at the time that you thought you would, or a meeting comes up and you're kind of in this constant state of anxiety and rush and getting to the next thing. Am I going to make it home to make dinner in time? I didn't go to bed early enough. This kind of constant rush for the next thing. And I think what's been really nice about being, in lockdown, one of the kind of few positives, I guess, is removing those barriers. And I think making you a bit more focused on what you want to do, whether that's from a work perspective or, on a personal level, like who are the people that you want to make time for and set up a Zoom? Who are the people that you feel like you just had to see because we haven't seen them in a while, we should see them, we're not really that close, but that's just what we should do. And you fill up your whole time with all this busyness, but you're not really doing the things that you want to do. So I think there's this book that I read called Essentialism, which I can send to Sheila, which is all about kind of this idea that we can be rushed. And if you have got a circle and you've got all these things you're trying to achieve, you've got all these arrows and you're never going to make much progress in any of these directions. But if you've got a kind of single goal or something that you're focused on achieving, you're going to get there much quicker. So whether that be a habit or something that you're trying to do. And I think what's been really important about this time is removing those barriers and the busyness and the blockers and just focus on what's important, which might be exercise or eating well or, prioritizing your work. I think that's the really important bit that we need to take into our normal life once it returns is, do I need to do this thing? Do I need to feel pressure to get into the office, or to get that particular train, or I should get up at the same time every day? What are those things that we can take away from this, calmer, quieter time that we're in now?
I think you're right. I think prioritizing, like you said, what actually matters to you, and I think we've got a bit more time now where we can actually sit and do that as well. Okay, so we're coming towards the end of the session. I've just got a couple of questions left, but if any of you guys that are watching have any questions, by all means do pop them into the chat box. We'll have a couple of minutes for that. But Chris, I want to take it back over to you. So I talked about atomic habits and I've done a very basic introduction, but you run sessions a lot more detailed on habits. So if you were kind of going to make any recommendations for anyone that's listening on how to get started with it, what would you say they need to do? What steps would you say people need to take?
Yeah, thanks, Sheila. I think there's 3 steps for me, and to echo the points you mentioned at the start as well, I think habits make up to about 45 or 50% of our daily routine. We're not always conscious of them. Even the smallest of things, when you come out of the door and you forget, you think, have I locked the door? Like, you go back and you have. It's just something that your brain does. Habits are there to save brain power, really. So the idea behind creating habits, there's 3 other steps to go along with what you mentioned earlier. And I think one of them is, the first thing is to create a ritual. So before something can become a habit, it has to become a ritual. It is something that you have to be conscious of and focused on. And a really effective way to build it into a habit is to do something called habit stacking. So to stack it on something you're already doing. So for example, you do still drink cups of coffee. Well done, Hettel, for cutting it out. But say, for example, you drink 3 or 4 cups of coffee a day, but you also want to get healthier. Your habit stack might be that every time you go and make a cup of coffee while the kettle's boiling, you will do 10 press-ups or 10 squats or as many lunges or squats you can do while the kettle's boiling, because it links into the second one around starting small. The idea is sometimes when we want to do something, we want to be perfect at it straight away, and when we're not, or when we can't see progress, we just kind of give up. So the idea is starting so small, it requires zero willpower or motivation, because a lot of the time we get confused that we need to be motivated to do something all the time when we don't, because motivation is never there when you need it, really. And the idea that motivation is most important isn't true. It's more around the implementation. So echoing what everyone has said on this call, which I've really enjoyed and learned a lot as well. There's loads of studies around this, and if people are a bit more curious, it's called implementation intentions. So one of the studies I'll share with you, they had 3 groups of people, 70 people in each, and they were asked to exercise for 2 weeks. The first group were just asked to write down when they exercised. The second group were asked to do that, but also given a ton of motivational material. Here's how to work out, here's how to benefit from it, here's what to eat. And the third group were given that, but they were also asked at the start to write down when they'd exercise, where they'd exercise, and how long they'd exercise for. 2 weeks passed and they come back. There's the first group, only 35% of people continued to exercise. The second group, only 38%. So not much difference. They had all this motivational material, and it's not around this motivation. There's tons of content out there. What they found with the third group was 92% of people continue to exercise, because what we look for as human beings is social cues. It's why alarms work so well. It's why pumping the smell of bread in Tesco when we walk in makes us hungry. But the biggest cues for us is time and location. And if we can really commit to that when we're looking to form a new habit, whether it's running, whether it's eating healthier, the more likely we are to stick to it. So that's kind of thinking about it when you're starting small, is just start small. And the third piece around that is focus on the habit, not the outcome. So there's a great story in that book of a guy called Mitch, who had never been to the gym in his life and was told he needs to get fit for health reasons. And for the first month, all Mitch did was go to the gym for 5 minutes a day. He wasn't allowed to go any longer or any less. He just told himself just for that, because all Mitch was trying to do for the first month was just build the habit of turning up, not the habit of getting fit. He knew by building that habit, he would eventually get fit. So the idea with that in the starting small is just thinking, rather than looking at this big grandeur thing you need to do, is thinking, what's the 2-minute version of that? So rather than trying to read a book a month, if you don't read, is read a page a night. Just find something small. So just a reminder on that is find something you can stack a habit, a ritual on top of an existing habit. Start with something really small and then focus on the habit, not the outcome.
Brilliant, thank you. That was great. And you're right. I mean, we can see that with Hettel's example of yoga. Instead of doing an hour session, she was doing the 10-minute session. So she was finding ones that were easier for her to turn up to, like you said. Okay, so final remarks then from each of you. We've talked about a lot about the habits that you've already formed, or the ones that you're in the process of forming. But I want to know what's next. What's kind of your next goal? What's the next thing that you're looking to do? So let's start with Hannah. Hannah, what's your next goal?
Oh, I was hoping I wouldn't have to go first. I think I'm still working on these ones. I think the important ones that I still need to get better at are those overarching ones around contacting my family. So I'm probably still not doing that enough. And my friends from back home. So I'll be working on that more. And then just building up, what it is that I'm doing at work, and a big part of that is, what should I prioritize? What areas of the business should I be working on, working with? Where are we seeing the gaps in communication? And that's what I need to do. That's my kind of big goal is making sure that I don't just busy my days and just run around doing a whole lot of little things and not make much impact. So that habit of prioritizing and having a kind of strategy or a goal of where we want to be from a comms perspective in a year, that's something that, it's going to be big for me in the next couple of months to 6 months.
That makes complete sense. Okay, Hettel, what about you? What's kind of your next big thing?
Well, one of my goals is to keep up with some of my habits that I've try to form throughout lockdown. So whether that's keeping up with the yoga daily, like going back to work, I know I'm going to have 2 hours less, with the commute. So I need to just try and make sure I carry on some of these things. One habit that I do really need to kind of focus more on is reading. I'm actually terrible at reading. I'll buy a book, I'll start it, and then I'll never get around to finishing it. And I thought I'd have more time to read. But yeah, I feel like I just haven't. There's always something else that I prioritize over reading. So I think what Chris just spoke about before, maybe even if it's, if I read 5 pages at night before I go to bed, and then slowly work my way up. And I know when I do finally start reading, I will probably just want to finish the book, but it's just about getting started. So yeah, I like to read more.
Yeah, you're right. And I think that was a great tip that Chris gave, break it down. So if it's a chapter a night or whatever, do it like that. Okay, so Chris.
Yeah, it's 3 or 4 for me, I suppose, from a work point of view, from Payment Sense point of view. I think it's really exciting, obviously, where we're going with the new brand and SuperPay. So one of my goals is to get us into, or to be part of getting us into the top 2 within the industry, with our team, of course. Shout out to the sales coaches and trainers on the call again. Another thing that I've actually started doing whilst on furlough is learning more about trading. So, I love numbers. I'm really interested by them. So I've gone into that and started learning. So a little goal of mine I've set is to make a 4-figure profit from it. Which has been an interesting time to sort of learn, particularly with what's going on in the world right now. And the other one is to continue working on my podcast and to expand that and to get that into the top 20 within the industry within the year. So they're my 3 main goals.
Great goals, Chris. Yeah, really good. And I like that it's branching out as well into the next thing as well. Okay, so there hasn't been any questions in the chat box, but we did have a lovely comment from Christian saying he feels motivated now to get up earlier and take a bike ride, to limit his smoking habit and to have 1 cup of coffee instead of 2, which is brilliant, Christian. You'll have to let us know how you get on. He's also reading Atomic Habits, so it'd be good to know what your thoughts are on that. But that's the end of today's session. Next week's session, we've got Divya, Kirsty and Daisy joining us, where we're talking about navigating change. I think it's really crucial at the moment with everything that we're doing in the business. So hopefully you can all join us. It'll be back to Tuesday next week at 11 o'clock. But I want to say a special thank you to Chris, Hettel and to Hannah. I mean, I've learned loads from it. I hope you guys have as well. Thank you so much for taking the time out today to listen. I'll send out the recording and I'll send out all those recommendations as well from Hannah, Chris and Hettel. So if anyone's interested in reading more or seeing more on that, they can do. Thanks, guys. Have a lovely day.
Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.